Hey, welcome back to What Happened. So glad you came crawling back to learn more about some of the most infamous pop culture catastrophes across a broad spectrum of media. But they're all mostly about EA, Activision, and Bethesda. Speaking of Bethesda, due to the big bossiness of Flophouse VIP member Josh Silvestri, today we'll be cussing, cutting, and shooting through one of Todd Howard's biggest mistakes. Now, I know that's incredibly hard to narrow down, but this particular foible culminated in Bethesda publishing 2009's Rogue Warrior, one of the sweariest, crappiest, worstiest reviewed games in the entire 7th generation. Alright, so back in 2006, with a gleam in their eye and a rosy glow to their cheek, plucky young Bethesda Softworks tickled pink with the recent release of their small indie title Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, started publishing bigger and bigger titles around the same time. One of these was going to be Rogue Warrior Black Razor, an ambitious tactical FPS featuring 4-player local co-op, 24-player online competitive play, and a bevy of other interesting modes and features, all coming from an experienced FPS team, Zombie Studios, makers of the Spec Ops series. So, I'm
gonna stick you like a pig. Looks like the douchebag convention's in town. Drop dead, motherfucker, you fucking amateur.
That's not what we got, so what happened? Well, just like Richard Demo Dick Marcinko's career, much of the story is classified. Ah yes, Demo Dick, I bet that caught your eye. Mr. Marcinko is the founder of SEAL Team 6 and performed real-life Black Ops missions across the world throughout the 80s. When he retired and, depending on who you ask, framed, he started penning a series of novels under the title of Rogue Warrior, which, while based on his real-life experiences, would tend to exaggerate and dramatize. Just a tad. These novels actually got quite popular during the 90s and early 2000s, with many of them going on to be bestsellers, so it was only logical for them to expand into video games. Why? Cause bam bam, and you shoot bad guys in video games! Anyway, with the prospect of developing a series of best-selling military novels into an interactive medium, odds were that Bethesda reckoned this might become their own Rainbow Six or Splinter Cell. You know, the extended Clancy-verse. So with dollar signs in their eyes, they tapped the Zombie Studios to develop Rogue Warrior Black Razor. And along with their ambitious plans for co-op and online competitive modes, also had one big ace up their sleeve, another unique feature that sounded neat back then and even now to this day. Whilst in competitive online play, you could set an option that would generate various tiles for specific parts of the map, which each team could then choose from, typically being the layout of their spawn point. A more neutral central tile of the map could then be voted upon by both teams. This would, theoretically, lead to over 200 map variants. That's really cool, but it sounds like an absolute nightmare to balance and implement properly in an online environment, which, spoilers, it super was. Black Razor was initially announced in 2006 and was pegged for release the following year, but would see no further updates in this original form. The screenshots you are now seeing were the only media ever released for it. So, in April of 2009, Bethesda suddenly announced that Rogue Warrior was back with a new focus, developer, and name, dropping the super cool Black Razor subtitle in exchange for nothing. It's just called Rogue Warrior now. Also, the new company had switched hands to was Rebellion Developments, the biggest, most independent, most British studio in the world. They were primarily known for two things: making licensed games fast and cheap, and having one of the most uneven libraries in terms of quality, filled with dizzying highs, terrifying lows, and creamy middles. Alien vs. Predator, yay! The Mummy, boo! Rogue Trooper, not Warrior, yay! Never Dead, boo! It goes on and on and on like this. I've never seen a developer so consistent with its inconsistency. Anyway, there's one aspect of their development style that Bethesda found the most attractive, which was their commitment, of course, to leveraging their tools and Just kidding, it was because they're cheap and fast. This relaunch of the product was only announced in April, but it actually released by the end of that year in November. Zombie couldn't have been on the project for all that long because the game needed to be cancelled and then moved to Rebellion with enough time to finish the whole thing. What's more is that Black Razor was going to use Unreal Engine 3, but Rebellion used their proprietary Asura engine instead, which they had been using since 1999. Enter Pete Swamp-Ass Hines, Bethesda's Senior Vice President of Marketing, who explained/not explained what the hell happened. Suffice it to say, we were not happy with the direction of what that project was. We felt it needed a change in scope and a change in focus, and we felt that this was the focus that it needed. That the sort of squad-based tactical, in a sense, I guess it was turning into a bit of a Navy SEALs game, and it was less of a Dick Marcinko game. Which is an odd thing to say considering he was the founder of a Navy SEAL team. Anyway, along with the announcement of the game going from a co-op tactical shooter to a single-player only action movie sort of thing, there was one more surprise. Fresh off his Oscar win for The Wrestler, that well-known video game fan Mickey Rourke would be lending his, vocal talents to the game, voicing Dick Marcinko himself. Now, much like the world's best acting robot, David Duchovny, Rourke, if you put him in the right role, can nail it, but doing voiceovers is a very different beast. You're more isolated, you don't have sets or costumes to work off of, and you're almost always alone, so it's a vastly different discipline to excel in. Now, because of this, some might say that old Mickey wasn't really the best choice for this role. Moving on, Pete Hines had a lot to say about this new hire, and when asked by Shack News point blank if this meant the game was now taking a more Duke Nukem style approach, he replied with this: "I think the comparison is fair in that Duke Nukem is one of the few shooters you can point to where it's focused around that guy, as opposed to, I don't remember the name of the guy that I played in Call of Duty Modern Warfare, it was friggin' awesome, but I don't remember who it was. The point of that game wasn't about being those guys. It was a great story, but it wasn't focused on, here's this person, here's what it's like to be that person. So we felt this was just more like, here's this cool guy, here's what he's going through, and here's what his personality is like." Okay, so what type of personality does this cool guy have, Pete?
The great leader must have a tiny dick. Shit. Son of a bitch. Send me the bill, cocksuckers.
Fan-fucking-tastic. Anyway, Mr. Hines can lube up this disaster all he wants, it's not going to make it any more pleasant. While there certainly could have been developmental problems with Zombie's version, all those online modes being harder to implement than they originally thought, it's easy to believe that maybe Bethesda wanted to pivot away from all that ambition as the generation wore on. In the interim, after Black Razor was first announced, series like Gears of War and Uncharted were becoming popular due to their bombastic, movie-like characters. So maybe instead of pushing stuff like 4-player co-op and 200 maps magically generating for like 24 people, they instead opted for maybe the lowest common denominator. And I present to you the lowest common denominator.
It's a go fuck, Admiral. Your intel was bullshit.
Even with all of that, it's true that Rogue Warrior's initial appeal revolved around multiplayer and team-based skirmishes. So with very little time, Rebellion slapped together what might be the most slapped together bare-bones multiplayer mode you'd ever see in 2009. Ugh, jeez, you had more match options than friggin' GoldenEye than this. The map generator, of course, is MIA. 24 players was reduced to 8, and the co-op is super gone. There's just nothing. In fact, Big Dick Marcinko's 2 teammates are killed in the very first cutscene, so it's going to be a solo mission. Also, the game can be finished in 2 hours, despite being a full-priced release. That's so Bethesda.
As far as stupid gimmicks goes, Irish is the best fucking one I have ever seen.
So when Rogue Warrior dick slapped the very busy month of November 2009, it was expectedly ripped apart by critics. Now while the level layouts, AI, mission objectives, story, and core gameplay mechanics were classic 7th generation dishwater design, the over-the-top third-person kill moves and conveyor belt of expletives certainly gave the game a bit more entertainment value than, Zero. It was lambasted across the board from pretty much every publication you can think of. But more often than not, you'd always find a certain paragraph, or at least sentence, that would read like the following, courtesy of Jeff Gersman from Giant Bomb. There is something about the game's dialogue. It's read by Mickey Rourke, who mutters all his lines in a way that sounds closer to sleepy than badass. Specifically, it's the content of the dialogue that stands out. Rogue Warrior might be the filthiest, most curse-filled game to ever make its way onto console. When you step in the shoes of Dick Marcinko, you're stepping in a heaping pile of shit. Shits, really, and fucks, and motherfuckers. Even if you're accustomed to the rough stuff, the way it's used in Rogue Warrior is good at making the game a bit more laughable than it would be otherwise. Without the over-the-top language, Rogue Warrior wouldn't have any discernible characteristics at all. So, you know, there's that. One other thing of note were the sloppy cover mechanics, and the constant switching of first and third person, which never felt especially smooth. Pete Hines once again confuses and befuddles us with his answer. For a while there, we toyed with it being first and third person, and so we finally said, figure out what you're going to do, don't try and be everything. So we said it's going to be first person, but we are going to use the cover mechanics and knife kills, so in those situations, you'll be in third person. So don't try to be everything, but also be in both third and first person?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Now, what did Marcinko think about all of this? Well, when asked, Bethesda maintained that the game's script, sluggish and bloated with profanities, was personally approved by the Rogue Warrior himself, and was delighted with the casting of Mickey Rourke as well. What about all the violence? Well, apparently when showed various knife kill animations, Marcinko simply laughed and clapped. And I guess when you look like this, well, I'll believe that easily. At the end of the day, all the swearing and violence in the world couldn't stop Rogue Warrior from a staggeringly low 28 average Metascore, only a few points above Drake and the 99 Dragons, Christ's sakes. This was, and is, a permanent stain on Bethesda's record by a country mile, a goddamn shit-fucked country cock mile. It remains the worst reviewed title they ever published, and most likely always will be. Okay, so while we're on the subject of all the reviews and the general populace's opinion on Rogue Warrior, during that same interview with Shack News, when asked about Rogue Warrior's prospects and expected critical reception, Pete Gene Splicer Hines stated, "But you know, every game that people buy doesn't have to be the single greatest experience of 2009. There's something to be said for it's just a fun, personality-driven shooter that's got these ridiculously brutal kill moves, and it's very profane and colorful, and it's got funny moments, and it's got well-paced action, and some unexpected twists and all of those things, and hey, I played it, I had fun, I laughed some." Well said, Pete. Well said. After the release of Dick Warrior, Rebellion Developments shut down 3 months later, except they super didn't. Since they are a very large studio with multiple projects always coming down the pipe, they were able to walk away from the whole debacle relatively intact, and recently released the kind of unpolished but nevertheless fun and schlocky Zombie Army 4. As for Dick Marcinko, well, he never returned to the world of video games after Rogue Warrior's release, shocking, I know, and penned his last novel, Rogue Warrior Curse of the Infidel, in 2014. He is now 79 years old and still looks like this. If you ever meet him in person, you should probably not tell him that Rogue Warrior sucked. And with that, if you know of any other fantastic failures in either the video game or movie industries, let me know in the comments below or parachute into the Flophouse VIP Patreon to officially nominate a subject of your choosing. See you next time, and thanks for watching, you commie cock breath motherfucker!
Fucking ninja style. I'm gonna bring it to him. I'm gonna show him what time it is. Good spot to bring the noise. Ah! You morons will love this. Hope you assholes like fireworks.